Call the meeting to order for Tuesday, December 13, 2016. And as we start off every meeting, we'll read the mission statement. Norfolk Public Schools offers a safe, joyful, and challenging learning environment that meets the needs of our diverse students. Through school, family, and community partnerships, we provide an education that inspires lifelong learners and cultivates caring and productive citizens of our ever-changing world. Roll call.
Jeff Chalmers.
Jeff Curry.
Paul Cochran.
Mark Flaherty.
Thomas Doyle.
Ingrid Lardy.
All right. So moving on, we'll lead off with some correspondence, which we have a vote on a donation, which is for a total of $641.65. $250 of that was from the PTO for mentor text, and from the class gift from the class of 2016 is the amount of $391.65, and that's iPads for the art classroom. So do we have a motion to accept these donations?
I make a motion that we accept the donations.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second the donation. I'll second. Leave it at that.
We can try another person if you're not ready.
Maybe for the next one.
Okay, well, do better next time. I assume no further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. We have a request from the Community Credit Union. And this is their program, correct?
Yep, it's to run the financial literacy program that they've run
the last few
in the
years,
past.
right?
Yes,
Yeah.
the last few years, the committee has approved waiving the room fee and allowing them to run the program.
My son did this at one point. It was a very nice program. So that's my personal experience with it. So it's a really nice thing they do. They come in, they teach basically the kids, give them their first opportunity beyond the home to kind of learn about financial responsibility and implications and ramifications of decisions. So we just need to vote to accept or to waive the fee for a classroom for them to use for this. So do we have a motion
And
for that?
also to allow them to send out the
All
information
right,
through
thank you.
ConnectEd.
I make a motion that we allow them to send out the information through ConnectEd and that we waive the room fee.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second. Nope. Double second. After you. Jeff and Jeff.
0 for 2 tonight with that. Any further discussion? No? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, so moving on to second here. So we have the goals, Dr. Lardy's goals, which we had discussed last meeting. So we went over those pretty much point by point last meeting, and as I recall, there were no changes or edits to them.
Yep.
I think there was a couple points we kind of asked further clarification on that sort of thing.
Yep.
But beyond that, I think that was it. So,
We just need to vote to accept the goals.
yeah, so we need a motion to accept the proposed goals for the 2016-2017 school year.
I make a motion that we accept Dr. Lardy's goals for the following school year.
Okay, do we have a second on that?
Second.
Okay, oh, very good there. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. And finally, we need to elect representatives from the 5 of us for the teacher contract that's coming up. And I think we discussed last meeting, opening negotiations early. Am I correct in that?
January.
Okay, in January. So I'll make sure before I said that, I had those dates right. So I've done this the last 2 contracts that have been here, so I definitely would want to do that as well. And so I guess we can kind of discuss, before we even get to a motion, discuss as far as whoever else wants to do this.
I've wanted to do it the last couple of times too, but it was you
Only
and
last one,
Sean.
'cause you
Well,
weren't on the
last one,
committee.
right.
Yeah.
So I'd like to do it this time.
We usually have 2 members from the committee on the negotiating team.
Just 2?
Usually 2, yeah, because 3 would be a quorum. So we have 2 members, and then,
We need to add more committee members. I'd also like to be involved, or I'm expressing my interest.
Okay. So we'll have to sort
So
out.
when does the, we talk about the dates of when it runs? Starts in January?
well, the the association submitted a letter requesting to reopen negotiations back in October, but they asked to actually start the meetings and negotiations after the first of the year. In the last few years, it's taken us about 5 meetings, and we usually meet in the evening from, 6 to 8 or something like that. We set the
Yeah, set a
norms up.
timeline.
And obviously, we meet, and then there's negotiations that go back and forth between the meetings. So I think their goal and our goal would be to try to have it settled by March, the contract, so that we could get it cleaned up, typed up, and ratified before the current contract expires.
The one we did 3 years, did we meet that March-ish
We met in,
deadline?
yeah, we were done by March, and
We were done by then? I
I think you
couldn't remember.
ratified in like April or something
I
like that.
remember it was done before the contract
Yeah.
actually expired, but I just
Yeah.
couldn't remember if we had gotten that done and everything like that.
You finished it up by the beginning or the end of March? Or sometime in the
I
middle?
think the earlier the better. I think both sides would like to get it resolved as
Curious.
early as possible.
I don't remember enough, honestly. I mean, do you have something going on the Ides of March that you need to be?
Two.
Okay. I don't remember enough. I mean, I think it was roughly about 4 or 5 meetings.
Okay.
We established kind of a, not really strict protocol with it, but there were specific timelines or timeframes, like we will meet from this time to this time.
Okay.
And that way that ensured that everybody had the best possible frame of mind the entire time as you kind of open and exchange ideas and so on with that.
I brought up the timeline and commitments just to at least make it
Yep.
known to everybody.
Okay.
We, it's in the district's best interest if we can move it forward and have it completed at the beginning of March for budget purposes.
exactly.
Before we have to have the public hearing on the budget and we have final numbers.
Right.
And I think the association expressed interest in moving the process forward quickly.
Yeah, and that's part of the rationale for opening up in January rather than waiting, is to be able to not remove that uncertainty of the budget period, have that already set. I mean, obviously, we're going to vote on this. I think what makes the most sense, Paul and I being on the Budget Committee, no offense, Mark, that makes sense numbers-wise, because then we're taking that same set of numbers, and it makes an easier exchange of ideas and information
I'm on
if we
the
have that
budget
first.
committee.
I agree.
Oh, that's right, I keep forgetting. I think we only had 2 for that as well.
I'm also on policy.
All right, well, I mean, I guess if we want 3 going for me, we'll just have to, I guess, do 3 individual votes, I suppose, and then how to do it that way is the only thing I can think of. If we've got 3
Yeah.
people want to, because we can't have 3, because it's a quorum.
Right.
All right, so why don't we start out with, all right, so there's a motion for one of us. Let's just put it out, we put a motion out on the floor and then go from there. So whoever wants to make a motion.
Make a motion for you, Thomas.
Okay, do we have a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay, so then, all right, so
Make a second
pending
motion for
further
second.
discussion, pardon?
Make a second motion for second individual?
You can do that, or you can discuss them individually and vote individually.
Yeah, all right, let's just go with your idea, Jeff. Yeah, do we have a motion for a second person?
I'm in line with what you said about the budget concept. I mean, you need to have the same set of individuals in both. I think it just makes perfect.
Right, but all 3 of us are also on the
Yeah, to
budget
Mark's point, he
subcommittee.
is right. I had forgotten about that, so he was correct on that. So, so do we have a motion for a second person as of right now, or just want to leave it as the,
Motion is second to have Paul.
okay. So since that would, at that point, if we did a third person, it would form a quorum. So when we vote on that at the moment, for those pending motions, so then, all right, so then all, I guess if there's no further discussion, all in favor of
I'll second Paul. Do I need
Oh,
a
I'm sorry,
second?
I apologize. Thank you, Jeff. And did we have a second on the first motion as well?
Second.
Yeah, we did.
Okay, so with that, okay. So then, all in favor of myself being on the negotiating committee, vote for that now.
Aye.
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 Okay, I'll abstain. And, okay, so then the second pending motion, which we do have a second on, would be all in favor of Paul as the second person for the negotiating committee. So we have
Aye.
that, so all in favor for that?
Aye.
Aye.
Staying.
I'm going to abstain because I put myself in the running for that one too, so that would probably be a conflict.
Right, okay. So that's 3, so then, all right, so then the motion passes, and we'll leave it at that. Yeah, because we'd be voting against each other if we, yeah, so we can't make a third motion, so I just want to make sure I had that right in my head. Okay. Sorry, I was at the game last night, so I'm operating at 50% power as opposed to my normal 60% power, so. All right, so then we have all that. Okay, so we move on to Ingrid's portion of the evening.
Okay, so I have several things tonight. The first is the Walker report. So in your packets was a copy of the complete final report that the Walker Partnerships provided to the 4 school districts, Plainville, Rentham, King Philip, and Norfolk. At our last meeting, we talked a little bit about the joint meeting we had with all 4 districts to review the recommendations. So tonight, I'm really going to specifically focus on the findings and recommendations that were in the Norfolk part of the report, as well as next steps for the 4 districts. On your desk today, you have another packet here. This was prepared by Dr. Tupper, our special education director, and it just summarizes the findings of the reports and our action steps. So I thought that would be helpful for us to kind of look at. The first section of the report, again, the audit comprised several different steps. There were focus group interviews, there were visits to all of our specialized programs, there was a paperwork audit, they looked at state data, they looked at our CPR and mid-cycle reviews from the Department of Education. So there was a lot of different things that contributed to the data gathering for this. One comment that I wanted to make is when we met as the 4 superintendents to talk about structuring the interview component of the report, we brainstormed together who to include in the interviews. And at that meeting, we decided we weren't doing parent interviews as part of the Walker visits for the main reason that we felt that under a time crunch, we wouldn't be able to do that in a way that it was really necessarily unbiased. I mean, if you were going to collect parent feedback, we had talked about doing broad surveys and getting all the data back, but we didn't feel that selecting handfuls of parents was going to really contribute because it wouldn't be necessarily objective as to the data that you collected. So we had made that decision. So you'll note in the report that none of the elementary districts had parent interviews as part of the process. King Philip decided afterwards that they were going to include a few parents in that. So I just wanted to comment because the lack of parent feedback in this doesn't reflect that parents weren't happy with our programs. It reflected the fact that we didn't have an objective way to collect data in this process. We are collecting some data through strategic planning that's much broader in terms of the parent portion, and I'll be able to report that when we get that back. Okay? The beginning part of the report, there were a lot of different areas that the Walker Partnerships commended Norfolk for, so I wanted to highlight some of those. All of the students in our district are assigned to a general education classroom. There is a philosophy of trying to support kids in the least restrictive environment and having kids connected to homerooms, regardless of their disabilities, so the district was commended for that. Also, we had that compliance audit that looked at all of the dimensions of special education regulations and civil rights laws, and we were in full compliance with all the regulations there. We were commended for the strength of our professional development offerings and the extensive professional development program that we have in place. The quality of the IEPs and the detail of the evaluations, reports, and student profiles that are developed was also a strength. The special education process and procedural manual that we have available for parents and posted on the website was comprehensive. We were commended for the fluidity of our programming. We are able to support kids in and out of class through the use of paraprofessional staff. We also have strong, what they call positive behavioral interventions and supports. So that's a program. We use Open Circle. We have anti-bullying programs. We use the MARC curriculum. So the quality of the social emotional programs was commended as well. We also have a strong standard curriculum, which you've seen over the last few years. We've adopted core math programs, science programs, social studies. So we have a well-established curriculum. There's several others that are mentioned, but that's sort of an overall, some of the things that were commended. Then the next section of the report issues some findings, and in the next page, on page 2, you'll see in yellow, these are some of the findings. We have already addressed several of the things that they noted in the report, so I just wanted to speak to that. The first finding was that we did not offer a language-based program for grade 2 students. A language-based program is a very intensive, structured approach to teaching reading that really, primarily most districts use a Wilson program. It's a very intensive, it's usually an hour a day of instruction. And in Norfolk, we started that programming at 3rd grade, historically. This past year, we actually did move it down to second grade, so we are providing language-based instruction for students that require that kind of service earlier. So that recommendation's already been addressed, and that new program was implemented in the fall of 2016. Another finding that they had was that there was insufficient staffing for the social emotional program. So up at the Freeman Kennedy, we have a therapeutic program for students with significant social emotional disorders. Last May, I had come to the committee and asked if we could increase a teaching position in that classroom to provide academic supports to those students, and the committee approved it. So we've already added that position, and we have that in place in the fall of 2016. One of the other findings was that between our two therapeutic programs at the primary level, we have a therapeutic program in the pre-K2 school, and we also have a therapeutic program up in 3 to 6. We were using some different language and some different approaches to help kids with self-regulation skills and things like that, social emotional skills. So they recommended that we really look at tying those two programs together and making sure that we had one sort of consistent model. We've already addressed that, and we have moved towards adopting the, what's called zones of regulation. It's a therapeutic program to teach those social emotional self-regulation skills, and we are providing training for all staff. Most of our staff have been trained, but we have another training coming up. So that has also been addressed. The next finding was that there's insufficient staffing for the increased number of students with autism that are coming into our district. We have a full-time BCBA, and I was going over acronyms with people earlier because there's a lot of acronyms. BCBA is a board-certified behavior analyst that provides very intensive specialized instruction, typically to students that are on the autism spectrum. What we had to do for budget reasons is that BCBA, which typically would provide consult, home-based supports, working in classrooms with teachers, she is actually directly teaching those students for 40% of the day, or 60%, let me just check the numbers on that, 40%. She's 60% a teacher, and she's only available in that consult role for 2 days a week. What we had hoped to do in the next budget cycle is to hire another teacher to work with the population of students. We've had a huge increase in that particular population at the early childhood level. We'd like to add another teacher. If we do that, then that will free the BCBA to come back to working sort of cross-building in a district-wide capacity. So that's pending budget.
Is there enough demand?
There's definitely enough demand.
For one FTE full-time?
Yeah, there's definitely enough demand. So she's only available 0.4 right now, but we have many kids that have home-based programs. She's required by law to be overseeing the people that we send into the home. So there's a case management part of the role, but there's also consultation. So when we have kids that are struggling with behavior, she does part of the evaluation. She sets up behavior programs, things like that. So we're really stretched thin right now. We wanted to do that last year. We just didn't have the revenue to add that position, and we put the teaching position as a priority. So this would be the next phase. But the numbers are so steadily increasing, and when you look in the Walker Report, you can see the percentage of our students diagnosed with that disability category is higher than the state. So the trend has really shown an increase here, and that stretches that position pretty thin. Another was a teacher is functioning as the lead in early intervention to preschool transition process. We actually disagreed with the Walker recommendation here. So they recommended that we increase our team chair position, which is a 0.8 position, to full-time, and have the team chair pick up the early intervention and the facilitating those meetings for children as they turn 3 to enter into the public schools. What we have in our model right now is we have one of our preschool teachers who is the lead teacher. She teaches half day, and the other half the day she spends on early intervention and transition. We really think that that model works effectively. For many of our families that have been receiving intensive early intervention services, transitioning to public school is a big change, and to have somebody that's really knowledgeable about the program, that's there on a day-to-day basis, that can facilitate, who knows the EI staff, has really been invaluable, and it's worked very well for us. So we want to keep that model as it is. Well, I'll get to that when we talk later. Part of that position is grant funded as well, so it's a budget reason. The next recommendation is that there's a need for a more formal and consistent RTI initiative. RTI is response to intervention, We do have an RTI model at both schools. And what that is when kids are not progressing the way we'd like to see them progress, or they're struggling, the team convenes, they look at the areas of strength and weakness. We design additional resources and instruction. We implement those, and we monitor how kids respond. And that's before a child's referred for further evaluation. We make sure that different instructional tools don't help close the gap. What they're looking for here, and this ties to some of the joint recommendations, is the idea of all 3 elementary schools working together to have a consistent RTI approach, so that we're using similar intervention tools, we're providing similar intervention periods, so that when kids are transitioning to Freeman Kennedy and they've been monitored and receive supports, it's the same criteria across the 3 elementary schools. So we do have things in place, but we want to work on maybe greater consistency among the 3 elementaries there. There was some expressed concerns about transition between grades 2 to 3 for parents, and also the transition from Norfolk Public Schools to King Philip. And we've talked a little bit about that. We are moving forward with a joint steering committee. Part of the issue is the flexibility of program options at the middle school we have different philosophical models at the elementary and middle school, so that's been sort of a bumpy place in terms of the transition. But King Philip has expressed interest in working on kind of smoothing that out with us, so that'll be something that we'll be working on. And we will be looking a little further at our transition between the 2 buildings here. The next 2 findings was that there was expressed a concern from teachers that there's a lack of common planning time, meaning that grade 6 teachers don't all have the same time to share instructional ideas and to plan together. And that was expressed at grade 6. And also sometimes planning time for instructional assistants to meet individually with the special educators they work with. These are constant challenges, and they're very much budget-driven, because when teachers' common planning time is dependent on when they have a special. And we have 7 teachers at a grade level, and we only have 5 specials. So it's impossible, to really create a time where they're all in specials together. We do work on it every year, and we try to do the best that we can to have some common planning time over the course of a week. They also have contractual grade level team meetings before school, but it's always an issue, and we're always trying to look for creative ways to give them more co-planning time. But it's challenging with the resources that we have.
So what is it that made grade 6 different than the others?
Well, grade 6 switches for subject matter, so it's a little bit to be able to consult about school students and collaborate. It's a bigger challenge for them. Because they're sharing students. In 4th grade, you have your students all day for every subject. In 6th grade, you have them for ELA, but you don't know what they're doing necessarily in math, and there's that collaboration piece. And that finding came out of focus group interviews, so it was reported probably by that team more so than other teams. The last finding was that there's an increased desire for co-teaching at all grade levels, and co-teaching is a model where a general ed classroom is co-taught by a special education teacher and a classroom teacher, and that they differentiate instruction to meet the needs of all the students in the class. And we have been involved in a study with the University of Central Florida on co-teaching. One of their lead researchers, Lisa Diker, who's one of the leading people in that field, has a grad student that's been working with her, and we've been involved in their study. We've increased participation. We have 10 people participating in that this year, and it's pretty intensive, so I'll talk about it a little further with the recommendations. So after from the findings come recommendations. Some we've already discussed. So the team chairperson, again, we don't feel that needs to be full-time at this point, because we're happy with the model that we have with the early childhood. The increased co-teaching we do agree with, and we are continuing our efforts with the University of Central Florida. We have 5 co-teaching teams this year, and the co-teaching teams participate weekly in face-to-face trainings through Skype with the University of Central Florida. They do some co-planning, they do joint observations. It's been very, very successful, and we actually have offered that training to both Rentham and Plainville and KP to come and see the model. You notice when you read the Walker report that they're really recommending that for all 4 districts, and we've sort of pioneered the way in that, so we're sharing that out. There's a recommendation of continuing the efforts with rich professional development, and I think that's been a commitment of both the district and the school committee through funding. So we'll continue to work on that, and you can see in Anna's report some of the things that we put into place for this year. The other recommendation, again, was to have a therapeutic specialist for each building and a full-time special educator for the autism program. So I already talked about the BCBA is functioning as a teacher and a district specialist. If we can, in this budget cycle, hire a teacher to work with our population of students at the lower grades that are on the autism spectrum, then the BCBA can function as that therapeutic specialist between the two buildings. We already added the special educator for the social emotional program up here. That's already in place. They also suggested consideration of an additional half-time social worker or a counselor to work with the students in that program. What we did this year, and we actually find that it's working really well, the committee approved funding and we hired a consultant. So Dr. Craig Murphy has been consulting on a regular basis weekly to that program and providing support for our counselors.
Dr. Lardy,
Yes.
are there state mandates on how much BCBA support we have to provide?
No, there's not, but there
Population
are.
of students?
There's not, but there are guidelines in terms of the BCBA, our district BCBA oversees all home-based programming. So we have some kids that receive services in-home for functional behavior, communication, things like that, and they have to be overseen and supervised by a district BCBA. She's also, her expertise is in analyzing behavior and identifying strategies to improve students' functioning in the classroom. So she does a lot of consulting with us. So if we have a child that's struggling, she might be the person that goes in, observes the student, gives recommendations. So she functions in a lot of different capacities. So I don't know, does that answer your question? Or the guidelines are different. Every IEP team determines how much direct service a student needs based on their profile.
Mm-hmm. I think the need for this is obviously warranted when we have those types of students that have the
I mean, she really, based
but
on our current population, she could work full-time just with our preschool.
right, I'm curious about what happens if there's an influx of students that require this type of attention. You know, how do we deal with that
Midstream, we'd probably have to add staffing sometimes when, I mean, you can't control, like if we have a significant number of students move in during the year, we might have to look at that. What we do right now, we do have 2 of our assistants that are going through a registered behavior technician course that will give them sort of a lower level behavior analyst certificate. So under their, they have to be supervised by a BCBA, but they can pick up some of that direct service. So we are in the process of pursuing that. And that's a state recognized certificate.
Okay.
But it is a challenge.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sure. Again, implementation of a consistent evidence-based social emotional curriculum, which we've already moved forward with. We've adopted the zones of regulation and are in the process of providing training. And then the transition for students from from grade 2 to grade 3. We already have some of these pieces in place, but we are looking at some of the continuity of programming may help with the transition, and we will be looking at that through our strategic planning process to see what we could do to enhance that. There are some joint recommendations for the 4 districts. The first we talked about at our last meeting, which is putting together a K12 Steering Committee to kind of look at the continuity program from pre-K to age 22. And we're in the process of interviewing consultants, and we'll have a recommendation to bring to the committee in January for a consultant to facilitate that process. They also recommended that the elementary special ed administrators meet to really make sure that our substantially separate classrooms, so the language-based classroom, the therapeutic programs, that we're using similar curriculum in each of the 3 districts, that we have similar entrance and exit criteria and expectations. And they've actually worked on that throughout last spring and throughout this year. So we're really in pretty good shape with that recommendation at this point. They did recommend, as you saw in the report, there are some districts that were cited for over-identifying particular disability categories, so more kids being identified with a specific learning disability than the state average and than you would expect. So they recommended some retraining for districts on eligibility. Our school psychologist, our new school psychologist, Jacqueline Munoz-Lemp, has a lot of expertise in that area. So she actually ran the training for the 4 districts on how to identify specific learning disability. Our numbers are really good in Norfolk. We're pretty consistent. So she provided that training, and it was very well attended. They recommended that the 3 elementary districts might want to consider establishing an out-of-district coordinator position to be shared between the 3 elementary districts. Right now, our special education directors oversee out-of-district placements. At this point, we didn't feel that that made a lot of financial sense because our numbers are so low. So we only have 3 kids out of district, and it's not a lot of time over the course of a year in terms of managing those cases, and the numbers are similar in the other 2 districts. So at this time, we don't think it's necessary. If that changed and we had a greater number of students outplaced, it may make sense in the future to consider. And then again, a recommendation about collaborating on the 6th grade transition to KP. All 4 districts don't have the same special education management system. Rentham, Norfolk, and KP all use Eastbed. Plainville has a different system. So there's some discussion about technology there. And then they wanted common criteria for MCAS versus MCAS alternate assessments, which is really state-driven. So I think we just have to put something together that reflects that. They did note that there's an unusual amount of initial evaluations that happen in grade 6. One of the things that our special ed directors commented on in this is that by law, if a parent requests an evaluation, we have to conduct that evaluation. And we get a lot of parent requests before kids transition to middle school. So I mean, the majority of our 6th grade referrals are parent requests. They're not referrals from the school for an evaluation. So that I can't speak to why that is, whether people are concerned that their child's not doing as well and it's a big change to go to the middle school, and this is the time to look at it. But the majority of those are parent-driven.
How many of them result in a positive finding?
You know, I was thinking about that. We'll pull the data. I think that I haven't looked at it recently. In the past, the percentage of referrals made by the school that result in an IEP production and eligibility are higher than the parent requests. But I could get that data for you if you wanted to take a look at it, especially at the 6th grade level.
Yeah, might be interesting.
Yep. And again, the last recommendation was around developing strong positive behavior support systems. We were commended for the strength of our social emotional programming. We do have that in place, but again, every district has a different program. We use Open Circle. I think Rentham's using Responsive Classroom. So there was some discussion about whether it makes sense to have greater continuity between the 3 elementary districts in terms of the social emotional programming. Some of these issues will be examined by the K12 Special Ed Steering Committee. That's an overview. Any questions about the recommendations or findings? It's pretty dense, so, but I think we're really in good shape. And I think the best part of it is that we've agreed on a partnership to look at the issues in further depth collaboratively. So I think that's a good next step. Okay. All right, the next 3 items are very quick. By policy, I need to provide the school committee with a quarterly report on bullying. This quarter, there were 4 discipline issues or reports involving bullying at the H. Olive Day School. All 4 reports were fully investigated by the building administrators according to our bullying intervention plan and policy. 2 of the incidents were determined to be inappropriate behavior and conflicts between students, but did not meet the criteria for bullying, but obviously appropriate disciplinary measures were taken. 2 other situations were also determined not to meet the criteria for bullying. However, they are being actively monitored at this point. And again, consequences were put in place. At the Freeman Kennedy, there were 3 disciplinary issues and reports that involve bullying. Again, we always follow the protocol, the district policy for investigation. One instance was determined to be a bullying situation. Immediate disciplinary action was taken, and there were plans developed for both to provide support to the student involved and to prevent future recurrences. And the other 2 situations are currently being monitored.
Thank you.
Number 3, I just wanted to let the committee know, we are getting ready to start our strategic planning process. In January, we have a survey that we've just completed that will be going out to all parents. It's a 14-item survey to collect feedback to inform the strategic plan. We've kept it short. We've done a lot of research from other districts in terms of survey return rate, and there's sort of a magic number. If it's too long, your response rate goes down. So we have 14 items. It should take people about 10 minutes to complete. It ranges from feedback on homework to report cards to what are the district's strengths, what are the biggest challenges, what are your priorities. There's some information that in the survey that will look at how well we communicate to the public, some of our achievements and some of our challenges. And when we get the results back, then we'll use that to identify themes that we'll explore in more depth with focus groups. So we'll have focus groups of parents, focus groups of community members, but we'll use the initial survey data to inform that. So that'll be going out to everybody at the beginning of January. There's also a very similar survey going out to all staff members in the district at the same time. Okay. And the last is just another informational item. So over the summer, I think you probably remember, we were notified that we were awarded an $125,000 grant from the state for improvements to the Age Olive Day School. It was awarded to us and made available through a entitlement grant that would be overseen by the Mass Department of Education. Our plans for that money were we posted an RFP to solicit engineering for the new roof replacement at Age Olive Day. We've got all the proposals in. We were about to schedule interviews to select a design firm. The design costs were going to be about $75,000. And then we were notified late last week that the grant was cut in the most recent rounds of budget cuts in the state. So at this point, we don't have funding to continue with the design process, so we're holding on to the proposals, and if the funding gets restored, then we can move forward. Otherwise, probably be back to the drawing board in the fall with new proposals. So just letting people know about that. So attached behind my memo is a list of all the governor's cuts. Okay, and that's all I have for tonight, unless anyone has questions on that one.
Anybody got anything? All right, moving on to subcommittee, Jeff, with King Philip.
Pretty short and sweet. Some of the things that are any relevancy, one of which is King Philip's implementation of evaluation. That was probably the one I'd say had the most significance relative to the meeting. A couple other small items that really didn't impact us. That's it.
And the Super Bowl win.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Big Super Bowl win.
No.
All right, moving on to policy. Mark?
Right now, we're waiting to hear back on a couple of things. Other than that, we didn't meet this week, so we've got nothing to present right now.
Yes, we approved, what, 3 changes
3
last
last,
month?
yeah.
Yes.
And we have a couple we're waiting for legal opinion on.
Got it. And then finally, budget, Paul.
We have our first budget subcommittee meeting tonight, following this. Everybody in the audience is welcome to attend. In January, we'll prepare a preliminary budget. There'll be a presentation to the budget subcommittee in February. In March, we'll review and vote on program fees, public hearing, and have a vote to approve the budget by the school committee. And then go to public presentations in April.
All right.
No
All right,
changes.
Sorry?
No changes to the typical schedule.
Outstanding. Just great work on your part. All right, so moving on to, we have 2 renewals. The first one is the NTA. Still funny we have to approve them every year. It seems kind of funny to me, but okay, whatever. So do we have a vote to continue our association with the NTA?
I make a motion that we approve their renewal.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, and then secondly, we have a motion to approve partnership renewal for the NCL. So do we have a motion on that one?
I make a motion that we approve the renewal for the Norfolk Community League.
Okay. Second? Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then moving on to approving of the committee meeting minutes from 15th of November. There was a chance to look at those, but do we have a motion to approve those minutes?
Motion is submitted.
Okay, second.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And we have a proposed next meeting date as of 10 January. Does that work for everyone?
Works for me.
Cannot make that. I'll be in Chicago. Be
Sweet.
Schaumburg, Illinois.
Sounds thrilling.
Don't kill yourself then.
Are the rest of us okay? For time? Okay.
Yes.
Just put that on there, that's done.
So no subcommittee meeting that week? Policy subcommittee?
What?
No policy subcommittee meeting?
Well, if you're not going to be here, then we can't.
Exactly. Okay. So,
I'll email you, because maybe we want to meet separately
okay,
from that.
okay. That sounds good.
All right, so we need to do a motion to adjourn this meeting, and then we're going to need a second motion to move into executive session to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining and not to reconvene in open session. Please note with the executive session vote has to be by name vote, so you have to state your name, that type of thing. Roll call vote. Thank you, I couldn't think of the term.
It's okay.
I'm very sleepy. All right, so the motion to adjourn this meeting?
Make a motion to adjourn school committee meeting.
Second?
Second?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So then do we have a motion to, as I said, move into executive session to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, not to reconvene in open session? Need a second on that?
Second?
Okay, so roll call vote for that, please.
Jeff Chalmers?
Jeff Curry?
Paul Cochran.
Mark Flaherty?
Thomas Doyle. All right, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.